Greetings, Darklings, from across the interwebs. It is I, Precious Ken, the Duchess, here on a lovely St. Patty's Day Wednesday. I have my compatriot and dear friend with me.
It is I, Katy.
Hi, Katy. We also are very excited. I'm always very excited, but I'm very excited to have the band A Cloud of Ravens with Beth and Matt from Brooklyn, correct?
Yes.
Say hi.
Hello.
Hey guys.
Why don't you start out, just tell us who you are and what you do in the project and how this project came together.
Yeah, I started doing demos in probably like the fall, summer of 2018, and there's like a local imprint called Altals,
Mhm.
and I knew the kid who was doing it, and he asked me if he could put it out, and I recorded 2 or 3 songs, and he put it out on Bandcamp, and it did pretty well. And then from there, he asked if I wanted to do a full length, and then shortly after that is when Beth and I had met at a bar here in Brooklyn. And at the time that it started, I hadn't even considered it being a band, other than having a name and having a few songs. I really didn't think of it as a band until we had decided to do it together, because we loved so many of the same bands and had kind of a similar musical history.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, well, you play bass, and maybe we can make this work. And
I've got the brains, you've got the looks, let's make lots of money.
or make very little money. And have
Yeah, that seems much more likely in this day and age, but still.
Have a creative outlet. Pretty much is what happened. Yeah. It's rare when you run into someone and sort of like your life timeline runs similarly or parallel, and you figure out that you were like kind of at the same shows, but didn't know each other, and it's sort of it just evolved into this, like, let's just sort of like do this where we honor the artists from the past and tie in the artists that we love now. So it just kind of naturally became like we should do this. Like,
yeah,
let's see what we can make as a record, and here we are.
That sentiment is one that is very near and dear to my heart. And by the way, Matt, I did not mean to imply that you're just here as a thirst trap, and that you
Exactly.
That's not what I was trying to say. I mean, although it is true, you're a handsome man. You're handsome.
I mean, look, I tried to get him to unbutton his shirt and be like, listen, you got to work it.
Yeah, show a little something to the people,
I mean, no one's looking at me, they're looking at him, so might as well just show them what they want, unbutton, just get in there. Maybe even a scarf, like.
Ooh, yeah, a little splash of color. Although it had just come out, unless it was a blue scarf.
Right.
It would come out, but yeah.
I was worried that anything that had a vague amount of color in it would clash with the blue lighting.
So one of the things I really like is, I know it's a little on the nose goth name for it, but tell me a little bit about the idea of a Cloud of Ravens, where that came from, and kind of how that idea popped into your head, and how you decided to run with it.
Yeah, I quite honestly, like, it was when I was doing the initial demos, and again, this is before Beth and I had even met, and it just came to me when I was doing the demos. It fit the mood of the sound.
Sure.
And I thought, oh, this is a really this visual is makes sense with what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Or sonically. So I just thought, yeah, this this will work for this project. And it just so happened that, and I didn't find this out until, months and months later, that Beth's nickname when she was, a teenager or slightly after that was Raven. And so
I was known as Raven for a long time. And when he was like, I have this band called, the band name is the Cloud of Ravens, I thought, ooh, maybe.
Yeah, Kismet for sure.
Maybe it shouldn't be that, maybe because people that there are people that know me only as Raven. And then it's for a second, for a brief moment, I was like, okay, this is like, I named myself, something, but it really did kind of happen the other way. And yeah, there's some embarrassing, photos of me in the Raven days.
I remember when before you were doing music, when you started out as part of a young superhero team and, you were dating Beast Boy. And no, I remember, it was an exciting time. You were saving the world. It was great,
Yeah, and then after the cartoons, the entire comic series came out, I was like, okay, we can call our band Cloud of Ravens.
we're good to go.
We're good.
I'm excited that you got the reference. Are you guys nerds?
Full-on nerd.
Yeah. Tell me about the nerdery. What kind of stuff are we into here? Are we talking comics, sci-fi? Like, hit me.
So not only am I a comic book nerd, I don't want to date myself, but I was probably around the same time that I started playing in bands, I was dead set on being a comic book artist, and in fact interviewed at Marvel Comics in the city in like 92 or something like that as a very young man. And I'm just full on comic book nerd back to like, when I was 10, 11 years old.
That's awesome. Okay, well, each of you then, now that we've established that, what's your favorite comic book? One at a time.
So like series?
Yeah, like what, here, are you a John Constantine guy? Are you more of a, what's your favorite comic book?
If I have to go back to like, probably anything Frank Miller, early, Dark Knight.
Yeah.
His Wolverine series in the early 80s.
That was very good.
Watchmen, love the Watchmen, the original graphic novel.
Personally, I think that's got to be like the greatest ever written, at least from it's on Time Magazine best, 100 best novels of all time, which, when does that happen in a comic book? So
it was the first graphic novel to win a Hugo Award, which is a very prestigious literary award.
Is that right? I didn't even know that.
I did not know it won a Hugo. Yep. I just liked it, and that I'm just a nerd.
Yeah, I read that when I was a young man. I just was so blown away by the complete reversal of the like comic book anti-hero, framework, and just the way that it was, just turned upside down.
I think one of the coolest things, I saw an interview once with Alan Moore where he was talking about it. And he said, if you know anything about him, he's pretty against like anything being made into a movie and kind of hates this.
Alan Moore?
Yeah. And he gave the specific example of Watchmen as how do you make this in a movie? Because the real beauty of comic books is you're reading a story and you're going through it and you get to page 14 and you see a detail in a picture somewhere, and then you get to page 45 and then you flip back the comic book and look at the detail on page 14, and that's something that's truly unique to the genre of comic books that you don't get in a movie, right? It's one continuous stream otherwise. And I think like that's one of the best examples of what makes that special. Beth, we don't want to forget you. What's your favorite comic book or story?
Watchmen, that's what I was saying.
Oh, that is yours. Okay.
I said that, but it came out, I interrupted, honestly.
I didn't mean to hog the comic nerds.
Well, no, he's definitely more of a nerd. And when I was living in Austin, there was Mouse was going around a lot. I was a little.
Oh yeah, that was a great one.
Yeah, I've lived in sort of several cities where I can identify like the comic book of the time of the city I was in, but yeah, I lived in New Orleans, Chicago, and Austin before Brooklyn. And so,
You were so much cooler than me. Wow.
Me too, Ken. Don't feel bad.
well, I was Raven in New Orleans and Chicago. And then when I got to Austin, I became Betty, which was my alter ego when with my friend Leslie, who was called Lola. Betty and Lola were like,
Ooh, nice. I would have read that comic book. That sounds good. Betty and Lola sounds like a cool graphic novel.
It was definitely an adventure duo. That's why my Instagram name is Betty. There are people that don't know my name is Beth. Like they're okay,
Just
Betty.
the nicknames. That's fine.
Yeah, he doesn't. He's not really sure.
Ken, I wanted to ask, are you a fan of Grendel?
The band?
No, well, the
The
band.
comic.
Or-
You know, I like that one okay. It was never like one of my top comics. I do rather like the band Grendel. I mean, they're really cool.
And Grendel it's fantastic. I love them too. Yeah, but I was a huge fan of the comic back then.
Nice. That's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah, I don't know. I had quite a bit of comic. Like I think a big one for me is when I was young was the New Mutant series that became X-Force. That was like to me like one of those prolific moments where I was deep into the well actually I'm on page 26 if you remember actually cables the if I had to pick one that I was just too deep into, it'd be that.
That was a good era, yeah. That was the Rob Liefeld era, right?
Yep, that was. And in spite of his weird drawing, I still was just deeply invested in the story. Maybe it was because I was like 16 or something and I was like, oh yeah, that's what ladies are like. Sure, that makes sense. Obviously.
No, that was a good series for sure.
So, I mean, I could sit here and we could talk about comics or, any of that stuff, but let's talk about another kind of midnight. So you just had a new album that came out that's already getting a lot of buzz and has to say, I listened to it all day long today. Actually, for the last couple of days, I've been digging in deep on it. And I think to something you said earlier, when this album, I think, does such a beautiful job of being a hybrid between paying homage to the past and adding a lot of very modern elements. And I think that can be really hard to do because usually a lot of times bands pick a lane on that. You know what I mean? Like you're either trying to get that old school sound, like all Fender Jazz tube amps, and if it's not Andrew Aldridge, fuck this, or or you're trying to like, I don't want to be like some geezer from 1981. I want to do my own thing. And I think you guys with this album in particular, I really felt like there were a lot of times you were walking that line back and forth in between. Tell me a little bit about why this album is important to you and what was kind of the inspiration or theme behind it.
I mean, to hear you say that, the way you described it as walking the line between classic and contemporary is quite honestly exactly the way we.
The biggest compliment. That's exactly what we were going for.
Well, I am a serious music critic, so.
No, I mean, that's exactly the way we wanted it to be perceived, because we are such fans of, classics of, all the way back from, Joy Division to the Batcave scene to, Dance Society and, to mid 80s. And we're also fans of contemporaries like the Vampires and, actors and, so that's, you couldn't have paid us a better compliment in your assessment of the album. It's because that's exactly what we wanted to go for. We wanted to be to really honor the aesthetics of the bands that we grew up with.
Sure.
And but also try to have a contemporary feel to it. So yeah, I mean, you nailed it pretty much, and I appreciate that.
When you guys are going about your process for this, because like you said, I mean, I feel like there's pulling from a lot of directions in it, which is kind of what creates the cool cyclone effects that you have. How do you go about your songwriting process? Do you lay out music? You know, Beth comes up with a bass line that gives you an idea. Who writes the lyrics? Like what puts a song together bumper to bumper for you guys? Or is it different song to song?
Honestly, I'm like a riff guy because I started out as a guitar player,
Mhm.
and it's just I'll start with a riff. I'll start with a riff, and then I'll construct a vocal melody around it, and then on top of that, the phrasing just kind of finds its way into it, and it starts just with a demoing process, like probably most other bands do it, and yeah, I don't know, it's I don't even know. I mean, it's kind of it's a little bit like, I don't want to make it like sound too mystical, but it's just like it
Hey,
just
you can.
this,
This is the place for that. Go ahead. Make it sound like
this
you have some really huge plan behind all of
He's
it.
holding on to something. He's got to let it go. Tell us.
no, it's this record was really organic. It really just, I don't want to go to like, well-worn catchphrases, like it wrote itself, but it was between the frustration and the darkness of this past year and everything that everybody has gone through. Quite honestly, I was not doing anything besides sitting in a studio with Beth, putting this album together. And so it was, it's not like, oh, I got to work, so I'm only going to be able to work on this album in my spare time. It was our life for
Sure.
6 months, and everything just, it really came together fairly seamlessly, and I can get like super philosophical about how the lyrics came together, but it just seemed fairly organic, and
So Matt, do you do most of the lyrics then? Where that's coming from, or do you guys collaborate and kind of share on that?
to this point, I've done all the lyrics, but
I have a disclaimer on that. I am the biggest lyric
she
snob
is.
on the fucking planet. And the only, like, I really am. Like, I like one shitty line in someone's song, and I'm like, I hate your band forever, kind of. Not really, but my point is that we've discussed lyrics. He's written them. We've not really written lyrics together at this point, but and in all like honesty, it's because his shit is so good that like I'm like, what am I adding other than like I'm like it would be like the equivalent of being like an editor of somebody who's already awesome. You know what I mean? So
Yep. Cool.
so that's why there's been minimal contribution lyrically, and honestly, to speak on what he was talking about, this did pour out of us. It was definitely like it actually saved us as like during this time. It was like we could have been so disillusioned and negative and shitty and whatever, like everything was going on. It was the purpose. It gave us a purpose, and it gave us, just sort of doing it together and making the decision that like, hey, we're actually gonna do this, and we're gonna do it with the intention of honoring everybody that we've ever loved. And to me, it's a super hard feat. Like I come from an A&R background.
Mhm.
I've been listening to records and demos of artists for years. Move along, Kitty. And so for me, when you get into a situation of you can hear an artist and you can hear all their influences.
Mhm.
I'm for me, it's total respect if you cannot fully nail them on one thing in particular. If you can really feel all of the all of the influences there's modern things in here. Like if you can't nail a band and be like, okay, you're completely ripping that off, then that band has achieved something. And so that was a big part of it for me. And it in my contribution was a lot of it was we can put all these influences into it and not get nailed for it. I guess it's my point, because like, it really is frustrating to me when you hear bands, and maybe, I've been in the music industry for a really long time, so it's easy to be jaded and be like, okay, I've already heard that. I know exactly what they did, where they stole that riff from, whatever, but it's a real feat, in my opinion, to make a record where all of it's there, but it's at least not so in your face that it's just wrong,
No, I think that's really hard in 2021 to not sound at least partially derivative, right? Because I mean, most people making music today and in bands, we were just talking about this on the Sounds and Shadows thread the other day about it isn't a lot of 19 and 20-year-old kids anymore that are making music. I mean, today, to have a studio, to have a couple bucks in your pocket in order to do this stuff, a lot of times, and to have the skill level to not be taken as a joke, where punk rock is kind of gone and the Sex Pistols looking at a guitar at 1 p.m. and cutting an album at 1:45 p.m. is gone, where that's not okay anymore. I mean, you need to display a skill level because you'll get lost in the wash. And I think that's one of the things that's hard to, or easy to forget, is that the Beatles wrote every freaking chord structure that is ever going to happen in all of time.
Right.
And we're at this point just synthesizing, moving around, changing tones, changing ideas, trying to get new feelings, new lyrics to express, things like that. But just straight up inventing a new style, like, I don't know when that'll happen again. I mean, I guess you could maybe say with like Witch House or dubstep or, things like that, but even those to me are a bit synthesis, and being able to come through with something pure from your heart, which is the real way you sound original at this point, while that's going to feed on all the influences and everything you grow up loving and having. I mean, I think that's kind of unavoidable at this point.
I totally agree. I think that, my son's a musician, and I tell him all the time, he's far more talented than I ever was at his age. And, I tell him, whatever you do, be honest, do it with passion. That's what people respond to. And that's, there, like you just said, Ken, there is nothing that has not already been done.
Right.
Like 50 years of rock and roll, it's all blues-based structured, music. And there are not many ways you can go with it that have not been done. But if you do it in a way that's honest and is passionate, people will connect to it.
Yeah.
And I think that's, kind of what you're saying.
I think going along with something you just said there too, when you brought up your son and how it blows me away in the same way that, like I said, I mean, a lot of albums are being recorded by people 30 plus now, I mean, especially in our scene. And I was just listening to a Cold Transmission band, Camlin. Have you ever heard them?
Yeah.
Very cool, very great sound. And they're 17. And I say to myself, oh my God, I sucked when I was 17. How are they this good already? God, I've wasted so much time.
I think it's a sliding scale, Ken. I think that kids are exposed to so much more, so much sooner now, that it's just like, and I'm sure a lot of it's biological too, like, and yeah, I totally agree. I'm totally blown away by kids of that age who are able to put together something that people respond to.
Yeah. Katy, you want me to just keep going, or you want to jump in on this?
What are your musical backgrounds? How did you get into the instruments that you play?
My story is sort of embarrassing. It's like I grew up in Florida, and I was living, moved out of my house at like 15 or 16, moved to Jacksonville, Florida, and there was like a music scene there. There was a bunch of, there was a bar called Metropolis.
Mm-hmm.
There was a bunch, there was a whole scene. I got basically some guys were like, hey, do you play an instrument? Do you want to be in our band? And so I learned bass essentially just to be in this one band. And then, to be honest, I abandoned it for the last, not going to totally age myself, but essentially I hadn't been playing bass since I was 19. I've been in the music industry. I've been an A&R scout. I've been A&R at Atlantic Records. I've worked at all these different companies. I mean, basically I'm, the person that critiques people on their playing. So it was kind of a big deal for me to be like, okay, we're in the middle of COVID and I want to do something that honors sort of all of the music that I listen to and the scenes that I've been in. I was in the sort of like goth scene in New Orleans and in the industrial scene in Chicago. I used to like live with Al Jorgensen and his wife and the guys in Die Warsaw, and like
Wait, tell me a Jim Marcus story later. Okay.
Jim Jim is my old roommate, and so I was in these various scenes, but I wasn't. I mean, I was a bit more on the business side, on the sort of like the management, the talent scout side. And so I kind of abandoned the creative side. And not that what I do on, with working with artists isn't creative, but it really bothered me that I just, who right do I have to like go see, like, you should fire that drummer, he sucks, if I'm not also, doing something to remind myself of where I came from and just also it's been fascinating for me, because really it was only since we met that I started to like get a new bass and work on stuff. And the reason, what's been fascinating for me is just that I listened to music completely differently for a solid 20 years. And so I've had to retrain my ear from, I'm only listening to lyrics, hooks, melodies, this, that. And I'm like, oh God, I have to go back and remember all of those, amazing bass lines from the Cure songs that I loved and focus on that instead of knowing literally every nuance of his, vocal, everything and lyrics. So so that's how I came back to the instrument. So Matt's been doing everything and playing everything this whole time, but he can speak for himself.
I started playing guitar at about 15 or 16. I grew up in the punk and hardcore scene in like the New York City and Connecticut area.
Were you roommates with like Ian McCullough or something? Is it going to be the same kind of story, or
I wish I could say that, Ken, but no, I was.
Now I feel like we need to just sweep up the floor where all the names I dropped are.
Yeah, so I grew up in the as if I can follow Beth's story.
Yeah, just do your best, man.
I grew up in the punk and hardcore scene around Manhattan and Connecticut. In the mid to late 80s, very young. I started getting into punk when I was like 12 or 13. I was super young, and started playing guitar when I was 15 or 16. Mom got me a guitar. And immediately started, my first high school band with a bunch of friends, which was, even though we were fully ensconced in the punk scene, it was straight up death rock. Like, we were fully in love with Misfits and Sam Hain and anything even vaguely arcane sounding. We were fully about it. And then, quite honestly, spent the next several decades in and out of bands in the hardcore scene. Lots of touring, very little sitting still. But quite honestly, all the while, kind of imagining a band like we would eventually end up doing, Beth and I.
Self-realization, I like it.
Yeah, I mean, I would always get goofed on, even in the hardcore days of like, I was famous for the Irish goodbye, like leave a show without saying anything to anybody. And the joke was, where'd Matty go? He's sailing over a cloud, petting a black cat. Eventually, I was kind of led to the point where I started doing the Ravens demos, and which brings us to present day, really.
When you started working on this album, it was after the pandemic had already started?
Yes, it was maybe like after it was officially declared a pandemic, like I'd probably been working on it for a few weeks at that point.
For my job, I travel a lot, and I was gone about 10 days a month, constantly. Like I would be, I remember pre-pandemic, I was like, I just have to make it to like March 6th for the last like thing after being in LA and Nashville and whatever. Like I was like, I just got to get to this date, this one last thing. And then it was like, that was the last thing I did, because it just all came to a screeching halt. So that's when we kind of kicked it into gear. Yeah. I mean, because I was actually not gone all the time.
Yeah, that's when we were able to really work on it. It's as horrible as things were, with just being able to, because she traveled so much, and that was just kind of the way it was. And then to be in a position where we were able to kind of sit still and get some work done was kind of a blessing in disguise.
Okay, so I hate to do such a harsh digression, but it sounds like one of the cats has a big wheel.
The cat has a little metal ball that he's rolling around, and he's okay. It's not. It's like he can't swallow it.
Okay.
I feel like we have passed the point though where we're going to just say the cat. We were to the point of the interview where I'm going to need you to tell me
Otis.
What cats are there, what their names are,
right. So
what their nicknames are, what their favorite food is. I need to know more.
I'm gonna lay it on you. Today was a big day in this place. Currently, we're sitting in what is my dining room, and there's a window right here. And if not that anyone's following me, but I do post a lot of cat content in my stories, and there's construction happening outside of my window, and there's a raccoon that sleeps in next to my window. And so Otis and Clementine are two rescue kittens that
what's the raccoon's name? Tell it to.
It's Mr. Fluff.
Mr. Fluff.
Yeah, so Mr. Fluff just shown up, and so it's been a little chaotic. I mean, I was like, why are they meowing at 4 a.m. all the time, other than them being nocturnal? It's because Mr. Fluff was just making his way in, like, next to the window. So
live his best life.
So yeah, Otis and Clementine are Otis is, scaredy. I call his nickname is Professor Meaty Paws, because he has really big fat paws. And Clementine is fearless and a model and an Instagram star. And she's called Princess Petite Paws, because she has very tiny paws. So, and the two of them, it's like having a rodeo in here. They just go completely nuts and bring me a lot of joy.
Yeah, it's like, I know you're busy, but what about me?
Right. I know you're trying to have a Zoom work call, or any fill in the slot and doing anything. They've become really needy since COVID has happened. They don't tolerate any doors being shut, like no bathroom door, no nothing. The second a door is shut, they're just howling, like, let us in.
Why would you abandon me like this? You said you would serve me for life.
Yeah, and I go to the mailbox and they act like I've just, abused them mentally. But
I'm
But
going to need pictures of all those cats and actually probably the raccoon too, so that Katie can feed them into post.
okay, well, I've got them. I mean,
Yeah.
I did some posts because, Mr. Fluff is become a thing. Really, they really want me to let him in for sure. And I'm not going to
I think it'd be a big
right
mistake.
now, just because we did, have a squirrel that came in one time and that was chaos. So I'm thinking, Mr. Fluff might kind of tear some stuff up.
Yeah. Squirrels and raccoons in Brooklyn will straight up hold you up if you let them into your house.
I can see that.
It's a
They don't
mess.
play. I can see that.
If another raccoon came up to be friends with Mr. Fluff, would you consider the nickname Mr. Thumbs, or would that cross a line of comfort?
No, Mr. Thumbs is good, and I feel like Mr. Thumbs might be like a top hat wearing one.
Yeah, with like a
You know,
monocle.
Like,
Ooh,
yeah, totally,
yeah.
like a monocle, and also like I'm below.
Maybe a cane with a skull.
Maybe
on top.
even a little, like, maybe a little haughty. Maybe like, I'm also a trash panda, but I do it with style.
Yes.
See, I was thinking more when you were describing this raccoon, it's not like a nice fancy top hat and the monocle. It's more like a Artful Dodger kind of situation, like, because it's a raccoon, a slick, street raccoon about town.
Right. He's kind of feigning refinement.
Exactly.
There you go. I got it, Ken. I got
Well,
Pull
but
that silk top hat off someone else.
Mr. Fluffy, yes, but when we're talking about Mr. Thumbs, I mean,
That could be a whole different situation.
And Mr. Thumbs probably has kids, but his son likes to be called Thumbs because Mr. Thumbs is his dad, and like Thumbs likes to skateboard and do tech stuff.
Yeah, he's probably like, call me Thumbs Up.
Yeah.
I feel like this has gotten so nerdy now that like I need you to roll up character sheets for Mr. Thumbs and Mr. Fluffy, and we're just going to move over into doing a Dungeons and Dragons adventure for these raccoons.
I'm gonna make Matt, showcase his marble chops. Like, I need to see.
Oh, the raccoon!
Well, full disclosure, I didn't get hired, so I can't.
Well, like, you can't call it marble, but hey, we could storyboard this.
Yeah.
Get you some artwork on this.
All right. I'm open for whatever.
Okay. We're gonna change gears again because we here at Sounds and Shadows primarily are a music review page. So you guys being in Brooklyn too, which is obviously, a really cool scene. But apparently, Beth, you've been freaking everywhere, so you know the scene everywhere. Tell me about 3 bands that you are listening to right now that we need to be excited about.
We love actors. We love.
Actors are great.
We love Ritual House, Ego Likeness. We love who all would you say?
Kentucky Vampires are awesome. Pilgrims of Yearning are really awesome.
Yeah, fabulous. I love Jules. Yeah, I absolutely.
We always talk.
The cult sounds from St. Louis are fantastic.
Yeah.
I was talking to one of those guys the other night, and I heard he played me the new album. It's just fantastic.
One of our one of our contributors and that helps me with sound is a huge fan of it, and really has kind of been, like you were talking about, their big cheerleader to everybody who will listen, and really, so did a review of them, an interview with them and stuff. Very cool band. I like their sound a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, it's like, I can't wait till we can get back out there and we can see and interact with some of these people. But we are pretty active online in terms of just like listening and talking to other bands, and talking about shows with other bands, and figuring out just be part of the community. It's just important. We're genuine in that, and it just makes me happy that these people, that everybody actually really cares like about, everybody actually supports. It's genuine. I've only seen genuine so far. Maybe there's some ingenuine out there, but I've not seen it.
No,
I'm sure, but I think you're right that like, I think things are more like that now. And I think another thing to your point, if one thing the pandemic has really taught me and been good about is, it used to be back in the day when we were talking in the 90s or something, you started in your hometown, okay, and you worked your way out slowly from that base, right? But nowadays, I mean, you look at your Bandcamp downloads or buys away, and it's Kalamazoo, Michigan, New York, Berlin, you know, LA, Austin, Texas, and it's more about the type of music that you play that you can get fans in a lot more than where you happen to have your house at. And I think the way bands connect and support each other like that now, and I think that's a beautiful and unique thing to 2021 that is unprecedented in the music scene that we've never really seen before. So yeah, I think that's very, very cool and a neat aspect of what's happening.
100%, man. And it's, you know, like you said, to see, you know, especially within, you know, whether you want to call it the gothic scene or the dark wave scene or the post-punk scene, I don't care about labels, but you know, there's certainly, and I found this in your group, the Sounds and Shadows group on Facebook, and you know, there's such a feeling of support, you know, and that quite honestly, I have not seen very much in any other music scene that I've been involved with.
Yeah.
And I think that's, you know, that dynamic has certainly been exacerbated by the past year, you know, where as if we were together before this, we're more so now, you know, it's very much a familial kind of feeling. And, you know, it's great to see people just chiming in and being real and just being, and being vulnerable, you know, people chiming in. And you were just talking about, you know, someone having, and I was following the post about, I can't remember who it was, but talking about like, hey, I'm XYZ years old. And, you know, some people feel that this is too old to be making music.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's just, you know, to put that out there is to feel the comfort level of being able to put that out there in a forum that relates to a genre, to me is fucking huge. Excuse my language.
No, you're fine. I fucking swear all the time on here. It's good.
And I love that. And I love that, you know, people are okay feeling vulnerable about that. And it's like, goes back to what I was saying earlier, which is, you know, people respond to honesty, people respond to passion. And at the end of the day, that's what people will carry. That's what people remember.
I hate to say it, but I think part of that is capitalism. It's the sheer fact. Nobody's burning each other, fighting each other over $1 million contracts anymore. Look, that's just not part of the game right now.
I couldn't agree more, man.
Remixes and stuff being such a big part of it. And, you know, the effect that has where bands contributing to each other, helping each other out, really goes a long way towards lifting each other up and just getting a chance to have like a big band that you were really impressed with or really into. And I'll use this one that you said about there, you know, Jim Marcus is working on one for us, and he actually did the art for or the logo for Sounds and Shadows. Or Stephen Archer, you mentioned earlier, did our album cover. And just having people at this level that are just cool and will actually help you.
It actually means something. It doesn't come from a place of co-opting their fan base.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't. I mean, for me, and I know I mentioned to you, you know, in writing that we have some remixes coming. But the entire purpose of the remixes and the reason why we're wanting to do remixes is really actually creative and full circle, in the sense that, you know, I come from like more of an industrial background, and Matt comes from a bit of a different background. It's sort of like part of the reason why we were interested in doing some remixes, so we could learn how the songs and the structures that you know, we whatever have created, how it can be different, and so we can grow and learn from it. And what has been full circle for me is that the remixes that we're, you know, getting or coming in are from, you know, people that are just producers and artists that I've known for a long time, and or people that we just like hyper respect that are new. And it's not like co-opting, you know, their fan base. It's like this is like in many ways more of a social experiment and more exciting in the sense that like it's like bringing the community full circle. It is done. It is being gone. It's gone. We've gone about it in a way that is very honest and, you know, we're excitable. I'm still the biggest fan. I'm just a fan dork.
Yeah.
You know, I really am. And also I just believe in these producers and artists and I want to hear what they will do. And I think other people will as well, just because they're awesome at what they do. So it's genuine, I guess.
I understand that sentiment so much that, you know, in the same way, I'm just as big a fan as playing in a band where I'm going to start a whole music review website about it. And because, like I said, I don't pretend to be a journalist in any of this. I just drink Jameson, get excited about the band, and spew a love letter to them at 2:30 a.m., as I will be doing for you very soon on this album, which is amazing.
An honor, honestly.
So,
I
okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to ask a question. I'm sorry. This is another like super harsh digression, but with all of this talk of pandemic stuff, I have to know, like, Beth, you traveled all of the time, which to me says that you're like go, go, go all of the time, and then just suddenly had to stop. You had this album, but did you come up with any other hobbies throughout this whole time?
Yeah, gardening. You know, just to offset my actual other hobby, which is anxiety. It was gardening. It's been cooking. It's been, you know, it's weird. I get into weird cleaning spells. But for the most part, I still really am busy, and I'm very grateful for it. I still work with artists. I still develop artists. I still, you know, consult. I do sync pitching. I do a lot of things that are music related, which take actually a lot of time. But gardening and yeah, I mean, I'd love to be able to be like, oh, well, I've just read 75 books, but I did not. Um, I watched plants grow, and I hope that sounds just about as true to what I think a lot of people are going through, which is, you know, you're like, wow, everything just came to a screeching halt.
Yeah.
You know, I think I spent a large portion of my day trying to be okay with it. And so,
Yeah.
and I've remained positive, which is the only way to be, because otherwise,
Yeah,
it could go real south.
what are you growing this spring? What's happening with the garden?
Well, I mean, surprisingly, the kale still looks like it's made it. But I had a whole, you know, my bell peppers, herbs, and then just a bunch of, you know, it's my first foray into like really what will grow in Brooklyn. I've grown things in giant, either hanging felt wall units or giant, you know, felt sort of what they're called, I guess, garden pods. So it's sort of like trying to figure out what grows in concrete. So snapdragons, lots of, you know, really would like to make a lot more succulents happen. But there's you know, I'm learning about the sunlight and the shade from behind my house and, you know, all that stuff. But there's hydrangeas in my front yard, and there's there's some Camellia Bush, which is all about New Orleans. And I don't know what's going to survive, but I could update you later on what.
If only we could grow beignets, then that would be wonderful. I'll touch base with you later because, instead of me connecting on a nerd level with him, I am huge into canning. I don't know if you knew that, but like I can like a mofo.
I'm jealous of your canning. Like
I do a lot of canning. So we could get together on what's happening in your vegetable garden and talk about some ideas for canning.
Come full circle for me because my grandmother had a canning cellar because she was like, Depression era. So she had
I have depression too.
Awesome, go open the wooden door, really creaky in her basement. And she had, a zillion mason jars of just really awesome pickled weird shit and jam. So I'm jealous of your canning prowess already.
We're gonna get you into it. I mean, you're gonna have a new hobby now. About like we're gonna definitely
find sheets of gelatin and getting crazy. I know.
Yeah, I'm for it.
Matt, did you get into anything crazy this last year outside of the album?
I developed a really impressive ability to binge watch Peaky Blinders on Netflix.
Nice.
I will right
I wish I could say that I developed a new skill or no, if it wasn't working on the album, it was,
It was stress watching CNN a lot.
I have recently, not to get political, but I have, since the last administration wrapped, I made a personal promise to myself to cut CNN in half, and I've managed to probably 3/4 of the way. I'll maybe turn it on for a couple minutes in the morning, but I'm off it.
He's weaning. He's weaning himself.
Weaning off, and like when I would come over here to be like, "Are you really going to turn on CNN?"
Hey, it was a dark 4 years, man. I get it. Like, I mean, it was easy to get lost in it, for sure.
I mean, we really, quite honestly, if you care enough to read between the lines in this another kind of midnight, I mean, it's very much about the past 4 years and the frustration, the rage.
Yeah, no, for real. I think that's a very real feeling that a lot of people had. And now I'm going to have to go back and listen to the album again and kind of tap into that, thinking about the, frustration and stuff.
You try not, as a band, and I'm sure Ken, you try not to delve too much into partisan fields, but if you're a thinking man or woman, it happens, and
I actually just mainly write about like ninjas and Lambos and samurai swords in my goths. So, I mean, it's fine.
Apparently, I love that song. Oh, did I spoil was that a spoiler?
No, it's fine. We've played it on radio stations now. We just haven't released it yet. So you're good.
Okay.
Awesome.
I'm like, spoiler alert.
No, but no, it's Katie. To answer your question, I quite honestly have not developed any new productive habits whatsoever during this awful time.
You're really, really good at making lists of shows to watch. And he is a very, very adept at finding obscure music documentaries that I've yet watched.
I'm big into music documentaries. I could watch anything music documentary. I don't care what it is.
I mean, he's like, you got to watch the Chicago documentary. Like he goes deep into like,
That was good.
So, his hobbies are making sure that what he's absorbing is awesome and tasteful. That's what I would say his hobby is.
Although not a lot of it is awesome or tasteful, but thank you.
Matt, tell us 3 videos, movies, television. It can be any of it. What do we need to be watching right now, and where can we find it?
Anything. I wish I could brag and say that like I'm up on like the new thing, but quite honestly, anything that I'm into, most people watched it 4 or 5 years ago.
That's fine.
Um,
I
Beth,
turned him on to Penny Dreadful.
she turned me on to Penny
That's a
Dreadful.
good one.
She's
That's
like, gotta watch Penny Dreadful. And I'm the kind of person who will be just like, yeah, I don't know if that's for me. And then eventually, you know, if I'm sitting alone at home with nothing to do, I'll be like, all right, let me check out Penny Dreadful. And I watched all 3 seasons in like, you know, 3 hours. Obviously, that's an exaggeration, but I watched it very quickly and it was fantastic. And Peaky Blinders, the entire series, I probably watched a dozen times each season.
Wow.
The aesthetic is, you know, right up my alley as far as like early, you know, 1900s.
How deep did you go into What We Do in the Shadows?
Oh God, I love that show.
Shadows is also great. I wish there were more seasons of it on Hulu, but there are not. And I have to also call out Peaky Blinders for having Joy Division and Black Sabbath in the same fucking episode. God bless their hearts.
Now, if you're looking in the market for something on Netflix, have you watched Lock and Key yet?
I've heard about Lock and Key.
So it's based on a very cool comic book or graphic novel by Stephen King's son.
Ooh.
It's super dope. It's on Netflix. And if you watch carefully, in one of the episodes, there's an actor's poster on the wall.
Yes! Yay! Go, Jason! Go!
I am making a mental note of that, and I will get back to you.
Nothing makes me happier than watching a show and then seeing like somebody's poster in it, like straight up since like way back in the day of like 80s TV shows. I would be like, oh my God, there's like a whatever. I mean, it makes me so happy when you watch a TV show and then there's like a Flaming Lips poster or something, and you're like, oh, look at that. And then also it makes me mad if it's like a shitty comedy and there's a Joy Division poster.
Yeah, like that makes sense.
Person definitely does not like Joy.
The cathartic moment for me was I was rewatching Lock and Key because they're getting ready to do the second season coming out this month. So I'm rewatching the first season and I forgot about this. I shouted to Rachel, there's a scene where the mother, you know, the show's about young kids like in high school, right? So the mother gets into this secret room and that has been like untouched since the dad was there. And on the wall is a Radiohead Benz poster.
Oh, wow.
And all of a sudden it hit me in that moment that I'm so invested in the show and watching it, and I'm the parents. And I can't connect to the children, but all of a sudden I realize I'm the exact age of the parents of this show. And I'm like, fuck, I'm old.
Well, it's like I was watching this show called Moxie on Netflix yesterday, and it's like a show or a movie about a girl in high school who feels like the school is super sexist and starts a zine and it's all punk rock and stuff. And her mom is Amy Poehler, and there's a scene where Amy Poehler is wearing a Slater Kenny shirt, and I'm like, am I Amy Poehler? Or am I the teenager? Who am I?
I'm Amy Poehler.
It's okay. I'm okay with being Amy Poehler.
Yeah, I'm so fine with that.
Like I'm like 100 in rock years or whatever. It's just really
it goes younger in rock years.
Oh, does it?
Yes.
Okay, wow, good. Because I'm like, and when I say things, I have to stop saying, oh, that person, I've known that person for 25 years, and they're like, let's see, so you're old as dirt. But yes, I have. It's a mindset. It's okay if I'm the Amy Poehler. She's pretty rad.
Dude, Amy Poehler is sick. I love her. Like, if I were to recommend some more like nerdy shows for you to watch, it would be Legion, which is like on FX. Then there's The Umbrella Academy, which is on Netflix. That one's so good. And then I feel like it does. Like WandaVision is so good too.
That is good.
I've heard great things about WandaVision. I haven't watched it yet. I watched all of Legion, and I got so, it's so abstract and you just get so lost in the middle of it, but it's still, it reins you in. It's
What about The Boys?
Ooh, yeah, I haven't watched The Boys, but everybody that I know is like so into it. They're like rewatching it for the third time already.
I mean, just from our conversation, it's dark and it's superheroes and they're messed up.
it's very Watchmen, actually.
It's like, but yeah, it's good.
It got a lot more serious. Like the comic was kind of the same concept, but it was very over the top, silly, like Looney Tunes shit,
Okay.
like very dark sexual themes and stuff like that still, but just kind of like just goofy gore violence.
Okay.
And so the Amazon show was much more, they tried to pull it back a little and make it like a serious concept rather than just, I don't know, goofy crap.
Yeah, they went hard on it.
Yeah.
Like they were like, this is not they weren't trying to, it's not a parody. They were like, this shit is dark.
Yeah.
So
Well, okay. Counter to that, something that would normally be portrayed as like a super dark thing, but was like really, well, I don't even know. That might not be accurate, but the Harley Quinn cartoon, the animated
Oh, I love
series. Oh man, it's so funny.
That's very funny.
I think that one's only on the DC Universe app or whatever.
Well, now it's on,
HBO Max.
HBO Max. That's what it's on now.
got it.
Beth
Good.
got it.
I'm good.
Okay, we hit on a lot of TV there, which is fine. That's good. We're just keeping it loose. I like it. Why don't you give me a little bit there as we're coming up near the end, and tell me what you guys have on the horizon that you're excited for, as well as kind of leave us. We're going to play a track from this album to close out. And in particular, I mean, I loved a lot of these tracks, and they really, like I said, I mean, just hit on an emotional level for me and had a very relatable feel. But Tithes and Offerings is one that just, I couldn't quit playing over and over again. It just, the bass line in it, it just the beat of it, and it's not like a poppy hook single song. It really isn't. It's kind of a deep cut, and it's not always on albums that like the deep cut is the one that just digs its hooks into me. But tell me a little bit about kind of what was the concept or idea of this song, and I don't know, why is it so fucking good?
Thank you, by the way.
Yeah, thank you, Kenneth. That we just did I just did an interview. Well, I'm sorry, we both just did an interview with White Light, White Heat, and they asked
They're
about,
great.
awesome, love Fabrizio, and they had asked about kind of like a sonic atlas of the album, and I had kind of pointed at Tithes and Offerings as being kind of the centerpiece of the album.
Okay.
And it's my favorite song on the record. I'm not gonna lie.
I love when my favorite song is the artist's favorite song. I'm sorry, I just love that.
I was so delighted when Beth had said, "Oh, Ken likes Tithes and Offerings." It's easily my favorite song on the album. It's the most stripped down. There's no guitar on it. There's the only song on the album where there's no guitar. It's just Beth. Some jump sequences and some high synth tones, and it's bare bones. It's like a Bach concerto, man. I mean, it's just it has so much freaking weight behind it while not using 20 million things. Thank you,
freaking love that.
Thank you, man. That's really the way I wanted it, quite honestly, the way I wanted it to come across, the way we want it to come across is just to be bare bones, and let's let the sentiment of the song carry it, and not a ton of instrumentation and a weighty theme, just
I like songs that have space in them. Everything I love. I mean, look, I love a full affront. Go ahead and give me some, Ministry, Land of Raven Honey, whatever, right in my face. But I also, kind of grew up and listened to 70s AM radio, and so did he. And to me, what was always so fascinating is when songs had, I mean, ugh, I hate this phrase, but when the song is a mood, like it's a mood, and it has space. It gives, like, in my opinion, what I like the most about it is that everything is sort of like an affront, and it's like you kind of have room within the song to like to feel something without it being shoved in your face, which is, I mean, I like it that both ways, but to me, in this song in particular, I just feel like has like the right sort of like room for interpretation and feeling and reflection, to be honest.
Yeah. I think, like you said something there that really strikes me is when I listen to this, it feels very much what I call the mist creeping under the door song. And it's where, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't, like you said, hit you like a wall of sound, or it isn't a pop hook, or it just slowly fills the room that you're in. And whatever your headspace is or whatever your mood, it just creeps in on you. And I think that's the real power of this one, and why I just kept being in different rooms in different places and letting it kind of slowly creep into what I was doing. I think that's, to me, like a powerful thing when you can pull that off with a song.
Well, thank you, Ken. I really appreciate that. I mean, that's, it's very much the intent of it, and that you get that from it, it's very validating, quite honestly.
Okay. Katy, do you got anything that you want to close up on here?
I just want to say thanks for talking with us tonight. I know that St. Patty's Day is like a hard one to make time for interviews to talk about comic books and TV shows and stuff, but I really appreciate you taking the time. This album is amazing. I feel like it really captured a lot of the feelings that I felt throughout the pandemic. And I'm excited to see what you all do next.
Well, thank you
Katy.
so much.
Appreciate that so much. And I quite honestly, I didn't know it was St. Patrick's Day till I was driving here.
I knew all day.
We're not exactly out to like float on a river of green beer.
Maybe next year.
Despite being,
Knock on wood.
each of us being half Irish, we're just so happy and honored that you wanted to have us so close to the release.
Yes,
like we were just
so
like.
And Ken, I know it's been a trying day for you, and really, really appreciate your,
Sure. No problem. I was really glad to have you guys on. I'm excited about this album, and I'm glad that we could kind of get this out and have a chance to talk with you guys and learn a lot more about you. So no, I think that's absolutely fabulous, and I can't wait to spin this now, and we'll be talking to you guys soon. I'm going to get a written review done for this one as well, and God's willing, when things clear up, maybe you can make it out the Midwest way sometime soon, and we can have you guys play out here.
we can't wait.
Toast in person. Pretend it's St. Patty's Day again.
Hell yes.
Yeah, I'll bring food coloring. We can dye anything green.
Color our vodka drinks, whatever we want to
do. Well, from Sounds and Shadows and A Cloud of Ravens, we suggest, even on the St. Patty's Day, that y'all keep it dark, y'all. Cheers.
Keep it
Thank
dark.
you guys. Thank you, Ken.
guys.
Thank you, Katy.
It's an honor. Thank you.